Commander Teo stood in the great hall of the Galactic Council, his heart beating hard inside his chest. The room was enormous, with walls that seemed to stretch up forever. Lights hung from the ceiling like stars, and in front of him sat 7 ancient beings. These were the most powerful creatures in the whole galaxy. They had ruled over thousands of worlds for millions of years. They had seen empires rise and fall. They had watched civilizations destroy themselves with war and hate. Now, they were here to decide the fate of humanity. Teo was not a young man anymore. His hair was gray and his face showed every year of his life, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He had come to this place with a small group of humans from Earth. There was Dr. Jiwoo, a woman with a brilliant mind who understood science and nature better than almost anyone alive. There was Minho, a man trained in the art of talking and making peace between different peoples. And there were 5 soldiers, strong and brave, who stood behind them with straight backs. The council had been meeting for 40 days. 40 days of sitting in rooms and listening to accusations. The council said that humans were too violent. They said humans could not follow rules. They said humans would destroy everything if they were allowed to stay in the galaxy and live among other species. The ancient beings spoke of wars on Earth. They spoke of how humans killed each other over small things, like borders and belief. They said that humans were like children who did not know how to control their anger. Teo had tried to explain. He had told them that humans had changed. He had shown them that Earth had lived in peace for many years. He had brought proof that humans wanted to join the galactic community and follow its laws. He had spoken for hours about humanity's good qualities. He talked about how humans could think fast and solve problems that seemed impossible. He talked about human courage and how humans never gave up, even when things seemed hopeless. But the council had already made up their minds. Teo could see it in their eyes. They did not want to listen. They were afraid of humans. Fear was more powerful than any words Teo could say. The oldest member of the council was a being called the Eternal Keeper. His body was made of something that looked like crystal, and light moved through him like water. He had been alive for over 3 million years. He was the first to speak. Commander Teo. His voice was like the sound of wind moving through empty spaces. We have listened to everything you have said. We understand your words. We know that some humans have changed, but we cannot take the risk. Your species is too unpredictable, too dangerous. We have a duty to protect all life in this galaxy. Another council member stood up. Her name was Grand Magistrate Vex, and she came from a species that lived underwater on worlds covered entirely in water. Her skin was blue and shiny, and she moved like liquid herself. Humanity refuses to give up its weapons, she said, her voice harsh and cold. Humanity refuses to join our peace treaty. Humanity wants to keep the right to defend itself. How can we trust a species that will not lay down its arms? Teo felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. Getting angry would only prove them right about humans. He spoke with a calm voice. We ask only for the right to defend ourselves, just as every other species has the right. We do not ask for weapons to attack others. We ask only for the ability to protect our people and our world. Is that not reasonable? The silence that followed his words was like a wall between them. The Eternal Keeper raised one hand, and the entire hall became quiet. Even the sound of breathing seemed to stop. He spoke again, and this time his voice was firm and final. The Council has voted. The decision is made. Humanity will be removed from the galaxy. A dimensional barrier will be placed around the region of space where humanity lives. No ship will be able to pass through it. No signal will be able to reach out. Humanity will be alone, beyond the void. This decision is final and cannot be changed. Dr. Jiwoo gasped. Minho closed his eyes. The soldiers behind Teo made sounds of shock and pain, but Teo just stood there, staring at the council members. His mind was racing. They were cutting humanity off from the rest of the galaxy. They were making Earth and all human colonies prisoners in their own little corner of space. "You are afraid," Teo said loudly. His voice was no longer calm. "You say you want to protect the galaxy, but the truth is different. You are afraid because you know that humans are different from you. You have ruled for so long that you have forgotten what it means to hunger for something better. Humans will never stop trying. Humans will never accept that something is impossible, and that terrifies you." The Eternal Keeper's light grew brighter, like anger itself. "Remove them," he commanded. Guards came forward. These were not like humans or any creature Teo had ever seen. They were tall and made of something hard, like armor. Their hands were strong enough to crush metal. They moved toward the human delegation. Teo stood tall. He would not run. He would not fight. He would walk out of this hall with his dignity intact. He looked at his people and nodded. They understood. Together they turned and walked toward the doors. The guards followed behind them, making sure they left. As they walked, Teo made a silent promise to himself and to humanity. The council thought they were punishing humans by sending them away. They thought they were protecting their precious galaxy, but they were wrong. They had just made the biggest mistake of their long lives. They had taken a species that wanted to be part of their world and pushed them into a corner. They had shown humans that the galaxy did not want them. And now, humanity would have nothing to lose by becoming everything the council feared. The dimensional barrier was activated that same day. It was invisible to the eye, but no ship could pass through it. No signal could break through. Earth and all its colonies were cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The council's decision was done. Humanity was alone. But as Teo stood on Earth and looked up at the stars that were now unreachable, he did not feel despair. He felt something else. He felt purpose. He felt anger. Yes, but it was the kind of anger that burned like a fire. It was the kind of anger that could change the world. He called for all the leaders of humanity to come to one place. It was time for them to have a meeting about humanity's future. It was time to decide what humans would do now that they were completely alone in the darkness of space. The meeting took place in the largest hall that existed on Earth. Thousands of people had come. Scientists, engineers, soldiers, farmers, teachers, and leaders of all kinds sat in chairs that filled the entire space. Teo stood on a high platform so everyone could see him and hear his words. The room was so quiet that a person could hear a pin drop on the ground. "We have been betrayed," Teo said. His voice was strong and clear. "The galaxy that we wanted to join has thrown us out like garbage. They are afraid of us because we are different. They want us to disappear and be forgotten. But I have one question for you all today. Will humanity disappear? Will we accept defeat? Will we die in darkness?" The answer came like thunder. Thousands of voices shouted, "No!" The sound was so loud that it shook the walls of the hall. People stood up from their seats. Some of them were crying, not from sadness, but from anger and determination. Teo raised his hand, and the noise slowly became quiet again. He spoke about a plan. He said that humanity would not waste time asking the Council for forgiveness or trying to rejoin the galaxy. Instead, humanity would use this time to become stronger than any civilization had ever been. They would take everything the Council feared about humans and turn it into their greatest strength. Engineer Nari was the next person to speak. She was a woman in her middle years, with dark eyes that seemed to contain all the knowledge of the universe. She had spent her whole life working on spaceships and machines. She had dreamed of traveling to far distant stars since she was a little girl. "I have an idea," Nari said. "All of our ships are designed to be like everyone else's ships. We copy the technology of other civilizations. But we can do better. We can make ships that are completely different. Ships that move faster than physics says they should. Ships that are stronger and smarter than anything out there." People started to listen with great interest. Nari explained her ideas. She talked about using human creativity and courage in new ways. She talked about taking risks that other species would never take because they were too afraid. She talked about breaking all the rules of how ships were supposed to work. Dr. Jiwoo stood up next. She was older than Nari, with gray hair and lines around her eyes from years of studying and thinking. She had spent her life understanding how living things worked, including human bodies. "The Council thinks we are weak," Dr. Jiwoo said. "But that is only because they do not understand humanity. I have a project that could change everything. We can change human bodies. We can make humans stronger, faster, and able to live in places where we could never live before. We can create humans who can survive in the cold of space without suits. We can create humans who can see in darkness and hear sounds that no one else can hear." Some people in the crowd were shocked by these words. They were afraid of changing what it meant to be human. But most people understood. They understood that humanity was not just about having a certain kind of body. Humanity was about having a certain kind of spirit. A spirit that could not be broken. A spirit that always looked forward, not backward. Over the next 50 years, everything changed. Earth became a place of incredible machines and knowledge. New colonies were built throughout the region of space that humans controlled. These colonies were not small settlements. They were entire worlds where millions of humans lived and worked. Each colony had its own city that looked like nothing that had ever existed before. Buildings made of materials that seemed impossible, streets that floated in the air, machines that did work that used to take 100 humans to do. Engineer Nari's ships started to become a reality. The first ship took 3 years to build. When it finally flew for the first time, everyone held their breath. The ship shot forward so fast that it passed through space at speeds that made all other ships look like they were standing still. Nari herself was in that first ship, and when she came back to tell people about what she had seen, she was smiling like she had never smiled before. Dr. Jiwoo's biological work also became successful. The first group of humans who underwent the changes became something new. They were still human, but they were stronger and better than before. They could lift things that would have crushed a normal human. They could run faster than any animal. They could see and hear better than any creature in nature. When they looked in the mirror, they saw themselves, but they also saw something more. They saw the future of humanity. A young officer named Hai-jun was born during this time of change. He was one of the first humans to be born in one of the new colonies, and his body was created to be even better than the augmented humans. When he became old enough to go to school, everyone could see that he was special. He was faster, stronger, and smarter than his classmates. He could solve problems that seemed impossible. He could learn new things faster than anyone else. But what made him truly special was something inside. He had no fear. He had only the desire to make humanity greater and stronger. Hai-jun became a soldier when he was very young. He climbed up the ranks quickly because he was so good at what he did. He understood tactics and strategy better than generals who had studied for their whole lives. He could lead soldiers into battle and bring them all back alive, even when the odds seemed impossible. The years passed. 50 years became 60. 60 became 70. Teo was now very old, but he was kept alive by human science. His body was weak, but his mind was still sharp. He spent his days watching reports from all over human space. He saw humanity growing stronger every single day. He saw technology that he had only dreamed of becoming reality. He saw humans doing things that the ancient council would have said were impossible. One day, a scout ship sent a message back to Earth. The message said that the barrier was becoming weaker. It was not breaking down completely, but the edges of it were starting to fall apart. Soon, humans would be able to send ships out past the barrier. Soon, the exiled humans could return to the galaxy. Teo heard this news and he smiled. The council thought they were building a prison. They thought they were putting humanity into a cage that would keep them out of the galaxy forever. But what they had really done was build a forge. They had built a place where humanity could become something greater than anything the universe had ever seen. And now, after 50 years of work and struggle and innovation, humanity was ready. Teo looked out his window at the stars. In a few years, he would be able to see those stars again. And when humanity finally reached them, the galaxy would tremble. The first sign of trouble came in the form of silence. For thousands of years, the Krell Dominion had sent regular messages through their space. These messages traveled on waves of energy that moved faster than any ship. The Krell were a military race, and they always reported their movements and their battles. But then, one day, the messages stopped coming. At first, the Galactic Council did not worry. They thought that maybe the Krell were on a mission and would send new messages soon. But days passed, and then weeks. No message came from the Krell Dominion. The silence was like a shadow that grew darker and darker. Then other reports started to come in. The Vex Collective, a group of peaceful traders, sent an emergency signal. They said that a fleet had attacked them. The signal showed pictures of their ships being destroyed, but the attacking ships did not look like anything the Vex had ever seen before. They were shaped like nothing that existed in the known galaxy. They moved with perfect coordination and used weapons that made the Vex ships look like toys. Within the next month, 20 more attacks were reported. The Melodian Empire lost an entire space station. Over 50,000 soldiers and workers died in that attack. The attackers killed everyone they met with perfect efficiency. They did not take prisoners. They did not ask for surrender. They simply destroyed everything in their path. The Eternal Keeper called an emergency meeting of the Galactic Council. All 7 members arrived quickly. The light inside the Eternal Keeper's body flickered with worry and fear. Grand Magistrate Vex's blue skin changed color, becoming pale and gray. The other members of the council sat in absolute silence, staring at the reports of the attacks. "This is a disaster," said one of the council members, a being named Thok, who came from a race of insect-like creatures. "We do not know who is attacking us, but whoever they are more powerful than anything we have faced in 1,000 years." "Some say it is the pirates," another council member suggested. "The ones who live in the dark parts of space and attack ships for treasure." But the Eternal Keeper shook his head slowly. "No," he said. "Pirates do not have this kind of power. Pirates do not attack with such perfect planning. This is something else. This is something organized. This is something purposeful." The council spent days trying to figure out what was happening. They sent ships to investigate the attack sites, but most of those ships did not come back. The few ships that did return brought reports of incredible technology and impossible weapons. The attackers seemed to know exactly when and where the council ships would be. It was like they could see into the future, or like they had spies everywhere. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, panic was spreading like a disease. Worlds that had been safe for millions of years suddenly felt vulnerable. Merchants closed their trading stations. Families moved from planet to planet, trying to find a safe place to hide. Governments started to make their own armies and stopped listening to the orders of the council. In a neutral zone, far away from the battles, a woman named Grand Chancellor Yuki was meeting with leaders from 100 different worlds. Yuki was not a member of the Galactic Council, but she had more influence than many council members did. She had built a trading empire that stretched across thousands of worlds. She was known for being smart, brave, and always honest. "We need to talk about the impossible," Yuki said to the group of leaders gathered in her meeting room. "We need to talk about humanity." The room became absolutely silent. Humanity was not supposed to be talked about. The Galactic Council had made a rule. No one was supposed to speak about humans or think about what happened to them. It was like humans had been erased from history and memory. The barrier that was put around the human worlds 50 years ago is breaking, Yuki continued. My scouts have seen it. The edges of the barrier are becoming weak. And something else. Ships have been seen coming from inside the barrier. Ships with technology that looks like nothing we have ever seen before. Are you saying that humans are attacking us? Asked one of the leaders, a man named Ko Sung who ruled over 3 planets. I am saying that humans were exiled 50 years ago, Yuki said carefully. I am saying that during those 50 years, they have not been sitting quietly and doing nothing. I am saying that humans were always known for one thing above all else, the ability to do impossible things when they needed to. And I am saying that what we are experiencing now matches what humans might do if they came back to the galaxy as a united and organized force. The other leaders started to argue and talk over each other. Some said it was crazy to think that humans were attacking. Some said that humans would not be organized enough to do something like this. Some said that the council had made the right decision to exile them and that this was just proving it. But Yuki was not listening to their arguments. She was looking at the data that her scouts had gathered. The ships that were attacking the galaxy had the same style as the old human ships that had existed 50 years ago. They moved with the same kind of thinking that humans used. They seemed to understand human weakness and human strength the way only humans could. And then, a week later, one of the attacking ships was damaged in a battle and forced to land on a small moon. Soldiers from the nearest council-friendly world rushed to capture the ship before it could escape. When they got there, they found something that changed everything. The pilot of the ship was still inside. His body was humanoid, but changed in ways that natural humans could never be. His muscles were stronger than they should be. His skin had a slight metallic tint that seemed to make him harder and stronger. His eyes were different, too, with extra layers that allowed him to see things that normal eyes could not see. But his face was clearly human. His name, written on his uniform, was in Korean characters, Hae-jun. When the soldiers tried to capture him, he simply smiled. He pressed a button on his wrist, and his ship's weapons destroyed everyone within 100 meters. Then, he flew away. But not before broadcasting a message that was received by every single being in the galaxy. The message was short, but the meaning was clear. The humans have returned. The Galactic Council made a mistake. And now, the galaxy will answer for that mistake. The voice was calm and clear and absolutely certain. It was the voice of someone who had nothing to fear. It was the voice of someone who knew they would win. The Eternal Keeper heard this message in his chamber. His light stopped moving. For the first time in 3 million years, he felt something that he thought he had forgotten. He felt fear, real fear. The kind of fear that comes when you know that something terrible is about to happen and you cannot stop it. The age of the Galactic Council was ending. A new age was beginning. And it would be an age that belonged to humanity. The great hall where the Galactic Council had once condemned humanity was now filled with desperate hope. Delegates from every major power in the galaxy had come to this neutral station. They came with offers of peace. They came with treasure and knowledge and weapons. They came with everything they had, hoping to make a deal with the humans. But the humans were not interested in any of these things. Commander Teo sat at a table that was raised high above all the others. He looked exactly as he had 50 years ago, even though he was now incredibly old. This was because of the technology that Dr. Jiwoo had created. Her science had kept him alive so that he could see this moment, so that he could see the day when the galaxy finally understood what humanity was capable of. Next to Tayo stood Engineer Nari. Her hair was completely white, but her back was straight and her eyes were sharp. She had designed the ships and the weapons that were now destroying the Council's forces one by one. She had turned human dreams into metal and energy and power. Dr. Jiwoo was there too. She was older than Teo, and her body was much weaker, but her mind was still perfect, and when she spoke, every word carried the weight of genius and truth. Around her stood 20 scientists, all human, all waiting to show the galaxy what human knowledge could do. And standing behind them, looking young and powerful and completely certain, was Admiral He Jun. He was now the leader of all human military forces. He had personally destroyed 13 council ships in battle. He had taken control of 30 planets without firing a single shot, because his reputation alone was enough to make people surrender. The first to try to negotiate was Grand Magistrate Vex. She had come in person, which showed how serious the situation was. In the old days, a creature like Vex would never lower herself by coming to a meeting as a petitioner. But those days were gone. The galaxy was completely different now. "Commander Teo," Vex began, her blue skin changing colors as she tried to control her fear. "The Galactic Council has authorized me to make you an offer. We will recognize human independence. We will allow humans to have territories in the galaxy. We will even allow humans to have a seat on the council." Teo did not respond right away. He simply looked at Vex with eyes that showed centuries of pain and exile and finally, vindication. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but every person in the room could hear it perfectly. "You will allow us," he said. "You will allow us what? To breathe, to exist, to live in the galaxy that we came from? That is very kind of you, Grand Magistrate. But I think you do not understand the situation. We are not here to ask for permission. We are not here to negotiate small pieces of territory. We are here to tell you what is going to happen." The other delegates looked at each other nervously. They had not expected Teo to be so direct. They had hoped that humans could be convinced to be reasonable, like other species. But humans, they were learning, were not like other species. Engineer Nari stepped forward. She held a small device in her hand. When she pressed a button, the air filled with images. These were plans, and they showed something that made every delegate in the room go pale. "These are the weapons we have created," Nari said calmly. "This first one is based on a technology the Council thought was impossible. It can destroy an entire planet from 1,000 kilometers away. This second one can shut down all technology in an area the size of a solar system. This third one creates a field that can make any ship unable to move, no matter what kind of ship it is or what technology it uses." She continued to show image after image. The Council had thought that humans might have developed some new ships and new weapons. They had not imagined anything like this. These were not just improvements on old ideas. These were completely new ways of thinking about war and technology. "The question is not what we will allow," Dr. Jiwoo said, stepping forward. "The question is what you will do. Will you fight us? That would be your death. Will you try to hide? That would be your ending. Or will you accept the new order that we are creating?" One of the other delegates, a being named Kroll, who was a great warrior of the Xenar people, stood up. He was tall and strong, and he had conquered more worlds than any creature alive. But he was not angry. He was thinking. "What is this new order?" Kroll asked. "What will happen to us if we accept? Will you destroy us? Will you enslave us? Will you take everything we have?" It was a good question. It was the question that all the delegates were thinking but were afraid to ask. Teo answered. "You will join us," he said. "The Galactic Council has failed. It has ruled for too long, and it has become weak and afraid. It exiled us because it feared us, and that fear was the right answer. Because we are not beings that can be controlled by fear. We are beings that respond to truth and justice and the challenge to be better." Admiral He Jun spoke for the first time. His voice was young and strong and carried absolute confidence. "The galaxy will have a new government. It will be led by humanity because we have proven ourselves stronger and better than any civilization in this galaxy. but it will not be cruel. Those who surrender and accept human leadership will be treated well. Those who refuse will be destroyed. Those who come forward and offer their knowledge and their strength will be given positions of honor and respect. Minho, the old diplomat who had been with Teo since the beginning of the exile, stepped forward to explain more details. He spoke of how different species would keep their worlds, but would follow human law. He spoke of how alien scientists would work together with human scientists. He spoke of how the galaxy would become stronger and better under human rule. By the end of the first day of talks, almost every major power had agreed to surrender. The Tethans, beings of pure energy who controlled many worlds, offered all of their technology to humanity. The Melodians, who were masters of making living things, promised to help create new kinds of humans that could survive in any environment. The Xenar Collective, once proud warriors, accepted that Hyjun was stronger than any of their generals and pledged themselves to his service. Within a week, the Galactic Council had been dissolved. The old order was dead. A new era had begun, and it was an era that belonged to humanity. On the last day of the negotiations, Teo stood on the observation deck of the station and looked out at the stars. 50 years ago, these same stars had been taken from him. 50 years ago, he had thought that humanity would never see them again. But he had not given up. He had not let despair win. And now, here he was, at the end of his life, seeing his people become the masters of the galaxy. Engineer Nari came and stood next to him. She was quiet for a long time before she spoke. "Do you remember what the council said?" she asked. "They said we were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed in a civilized galaxy." Teo smiled. It was a smile that held all the pain and all the hope of 50 years. "They were right," he said. "We were dangerous, but only because they forced us to be, only because they gave us nothing to lose. And now, we will use that danger to make the galaxy better than it has ever been." 20 years after the fall of the Galactic Council, everything had changed. The old ways of doing things were gone. The galaxy was now organized in a way that had never existed before. At the center of this new galaxy stood humans, leading and guiding all other species toward a future that was brighter and stronger and more full of possibility than anyone could have imagined. Admiral Hyjun walked through the corridors of the new military command center. This building was constructed on a huge space station that orbited Earth, the human homeworld. The walls were made of a material that could change color and texture based on what information was being displayed. Right now, they showed maps of the galaxy. Red lines showed where human forces were stationed. Green lines showed the territories of allied species. Blue lines showed the new research facilities that were being built across the galaxy. Hyjun was no longer young, but he was far from old. The biological enhancements that Dr. Jiwoo had created had slowed his aging dramatically. He could live for 200 years if the science continued to advance. He was now the supreme leader of all military forces in the galaxy. Billions of soldiers, from thousands of different species, took orders from him, and they did so willingly because they had learned that following human leadership meant being part of something greater than themselves. His second-in-command was a Xenar warrior named Kroll. In the old days, Kroll had been an enemy. He had fought against humans with all his strength, but Kroll was not a being who refused to see truth. He had fought Hyjun and lost, and then instead of killing him, Hyjun had offered him a position in his military command. Kroll had accepted, and over the years, he had come to respect human leadership more than he had ever respected the old Xenar generals. "We have a problem, Admiral," Kroll said, walking up to Hyjun with a report in his hand. "The Vex Collective is not following the new trade agreements. They are still trying to make deals with some of the outer worlds without going through human authorities first. Haijun looked at the report, and his expression became serious. When humans became serious, even Kroll, who was a warrior of great strength, felt a small chill down his spine. "Send them a message," Haijun said. "Tell them they have 3 days to fall in line with the agreements. After that, we will send a fleet to their space, and they will learn what it means to disobey human law. But tell them something else. Tell them that if they comply immediately, not only will they not be punished, but we will give them new technology and resources to help them grow stronger." This was the way of human rule: swift punishment for those who refused to obey, but also genuine rewards for those who complied. It was different from the old council's way. The council had simply taken what it wanted. Humans gave and took based on behavior, and beings across the galaxy quickly learned that it was better to be part of the human system than to be against it. In a different part of space, Dr. Jiwoo was working in her laboratory. She was now so old that she spent most of her time in a special chamber that kept her body alive and healthy. But her mind was still brilliant and sharp. Her laboratory had created over 10,000 new kinds of humans in the past 20 years. Some were built for space travel and could survive in the vacuum without ships. Some were created for deep water exploration and had gills that allowed them to breathe underwater. Some were made to be super intelligent and could solve problems that had seemed impossible. But Dr. Jiwoo was also working with other species. She had created hybrid creatures that combined the best parts of human DNA with the best parts of Tethani DNA. She had made warriors who combined human strength with Xenar power. She had created artists who combined Melodian beauty with human creativity. The galaxy was becoming something new. It was becoming a place where different kinds of beings could work together and create things that none of them could have created alone. One of Dr. Jiwoo's new creations was a young woman named Su-Jin. Su-Jin was part human, part Tethani, and part Melodian. She had the strength of a human, the energy control of a Tethani, and the ability to create and shape living things like a Melodian. She was the first of her kind, and everyone wanted to know what she would become, what she would accomplish. "What do you want to do with your life?" Dr. Jiwoo asked Su-Jin one day in the laboratory. Su-Jin thought about this question carefully. She had been alive for less than a year, but she had learned more than most beings learned in a lifetime. She had been taught by humans, and humans had taught her that there was always something more to achieve, always a new goal to reach for. "I want to heal things," Su-Jin said finally. "I want to take species that are sick or weak and make them healthy and strong. I want to help the galaxy become a place where every kind of being can be the best version of itself." Dr. Jiwoo smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped her creations would want to do. Humans had learned that making things better did not mean making things the same. It meant helping every being reach their true potential. Meanwhile, Minho had become the head of the diplomatic corps. This was a massive organization that worked with every species in the galaxy. Minho was very old now, but he still went to meetings and talked with leaders from around the galaxy. He had not picked up weapons in 20 years, but he was every bit as important to human rule as Haijun was. While Haijun held the power of destruction, Minho held the power of connection. He showed every species that working with humans did not mean losing their identity. It meant becoming part of something greater while still being themselves. The research stations that engineer Nari had started were now spread across the entire galaxy. There were hundreds of them, each one working on different kinds of problems. Some were trying to figure out how to make stars last longer. Some were trying to create new forms of energy that could power entire civilizations. Some were even trying to understand the secrets of time itself. Nari herself had stepped down from her engineering position 5 years ago. She was very old, and she had spent 50 years working on problems that seemed impossible. She said that she had done what she came to do. Now, she spent her time teaching young engineers, both human and alien, how to think in new ways, how to see problems from angles that others could not see. The most beautiful thing about the new order was that everyone had a place in it. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, artists, teachers, farmers, builders, all of them were needed. All of them had a role to play in making the galaxy better. And because humans had been exiled and had to build everything from nothing, they understood something that the old council had never understood. That every person, every creature, no matter what species they came from, had value and could contribute something important. Across the galaxy, in cities and towns and research stations and military bases, beings from different species worked together. They argued sometimes, because beings are beings, and beings always have different ideas. But they worked together because they understood that working together made them stronger. Tai-O, the commander who had started this whole thing, was very old now. He spent most of his time resting because his body was almost at the end. But sometimes he would receive visitors. They came from all parts of the galaxy, leaders and common soldiers and scientists and artists. They came to thank him for giving them a future. They came to tell him that because of what he had done, the galaxy was becoming a better place. In one of these meetings, a young human engineer asked Tai-O a question. "Were you afraid? When the council exiled us, were you afraid that we would never make it?" Tai-O thought about this for a long time. He thought about the darkness of space and the barrier that had cut humans off from everything they knew. He thought about the early years when humans did not know if they would survive. "Yes," he said finally, "I was afraid. But I was more afraid of what would happen if we gave up. I was more afraid of despair than I was afraid of death. And I knew one thing about humans that the council never understood. I knew that humans are strongest when they have nothing to lose. The council thought they were creating a prison, but they were creating a forge. And this galaxy, this beautiful galaxy that we are building now, is what came out of that forge."